Hello and welcome to the Backroads. My name's Mike and this is the latest instalment of Project TT. Last time you saw us, we were introducing the car formally. Since then, I invited a couple of YouTube celebrities to pop round and help me strip down the underside of the car.
Yeah, this is going about as well as you might expect, really.
It's going okay.
Why are we still here? Just to suffer?
So today, we're going to be taking a look at the handling upgrades that will be fitting to the project over the next few weeks and months. To begin with, let's take a look at the bit of TT history and see exactly why we're looking at upgrading the car. Shortly after launch, a couple of cars were unfortunately involved in accidents where people were changing lanes at high speeds. Sadly, there were fatalities associated with these accidents, and so Audi swiftly moved to deal with the issue. The problem was apparently caused by excess lift at the rear of the car, coupled with steering that was also deemed to be a little too sensitive. Sensing a raft of negative publicity, Audi moved quickly to save face, correcting the steering with a revised larger bushing in the front control arms alongside retrofitting ESP. Strangely, the most likely culprit, a lack of rear spoiler, was actually only offered as an optional item, although it did end up on most cars anyway as owners just took all recall items that were available. Unfortunately, these changes led to a change in the way the car handled, with many drivers claiming that the car is not as direct or engaging as it was pre-recall. With that in mind, the first thing we're going to take a look at changing is the bushes in the front control arms. Now this is one of the areas altered by that recall that we're essentially going to put back to standard. So the way I've chosen to do this is by using this metal sleeve produced by a great independent company called Cookbot Automotive. It works by reducing the diameter of the control arm opening back down to the original size, allowing you to run a pre-recall size bush. These are widely regarded as one of the best ways to sharpen up the handling on the TT and are actually really quite inexpensive, coming in at around £60. I'll be using these with a pair of poly bushes from Strongflex to get the handling back to the way Audi originally intended it to be. There are a couple of alternatives to the setup, one being a poly bush in a larger diameter and also a larger bush in a material called Delrin, which is much stiffer than poly and is supposed to be as effective as a sleeve and poly solution I'm about to install. The only real drawback to Delrin is it's probably a little bit harder to get hold of, and any gains over the Cookbot solution would most likely be minimal. In addition to this, we'll be fitting some solid front subframe bushes also from CB Auto. These are really nicely made and anodised for protection from the elements. They're also priced well, coming in at a relatively inexpensive £69.99. These will just replace the current rubber bushes and stiffen up the front end of the car, providing you with additional feedback when pushing on. Again, it is possible to use poly versions of these if you aren't 100% sure about ride comfort when switching over to solid bushes. On a side note, tubular subframes and control arms with rose jointed bushes are available, but they're very much aimed at the track car market and are in no way cheap. They do, however, have a few benefits in terms of roll centres, etc. So if that sort of stuff excites you and you'd like to take a look, they are available via a company called Pro Race Engineering in Essex. The next item we're going to be taking a look at is the front strut mount bushes. Now these are very prone to deforming due to the loads that are put through them over time and will quite often need changing over. When looking for replacements, broadly speaking, there are three main options available: standard, poly, and a solid camber control version from places such as Silver Project. There is also an alternative mount available which was designed for the Seat Leon Cupra R. So the bush sits between the standard TT and a poly version in terms of stiffness and is a good option for people looking to upgrade whilst staying OEM. Now I was actually running these on the TT before we stripped it down and I can confirm that they were really good. The only reason I'm looking at changing is that the car is currently running Bilstein B14 coilovers. And even though I'm really happy with them in terms of comfort and handling, they just sit a touch higher than at the front than I would like. So with that in mind, I've decided to change over to these Black Series mounts from Powerflex. So these are a poly bush that's designed to allow the front of the car to sit approximately 10mm lower than standard, which should give me that extra drop that I'm after. You can also get these in the standard height, as well as in the softer purple version. The Black Series ones are around about the same price as all the other options that are available. I don't have this next item with me, but the dog bone has already been fitted with a red Powerflex bush, which was put in at the same time as the 3-inch downpipe was fitted, and that was just to help reduce movement of the exhaust as it is a very, very tight fit. Next up, we have something which I'm pretty excited about. a Tyrrell Sport solid steering rack bush. Now look, I can't lie, this isn't a cheap item. They come in at around about £150. So compared to the other alternatives, it is a big jump in price. But all of the information I've ever found says that it makes a huge difference to the steering. So the claim is that it brings the stiffness of the bush in line with the Mark V Golf, where VW made the switch over from a rubber to solid bush. This apparently gives a much more direct steering feel and increases feedback for the driver. It looks to be a really well-made piece of kit, and I can only assume it will do the job based on the information that I have. Now, as good as they're supposed to be, if the cost is a little bit on the higher side, you do have the option of poly versions from the likes of PowerFlex. If you go that route, I'd probably suggest going with the Black Series bush, as it's the closest to this solid version that you'll find in terms of stiffness. This does seem to be one of those parts where you can basically just throw the stiffest possible version in, and there aren't really any downsides to doing so. Front anti-roll bar wise, although there are a few kits available, I'm just retaining the standard one, and then we'll be adding Strong Flex poly bushes. And with the front end of the car now sorted, we can move on to the rear. We're going to go with CB Auto bushes on the rear subframe. The idea here just gives us a consistent level of feedback from front to back. For the rear trailing arms, we will be using these PowerFlex Black Series bushes. These are the stiffest bushes available for that format. And any remaining bushes, we've decided to go with Strong Flex Red. Now, for those of you who aren't familiar with Strong Flex, they are produced in Poland and they provide a really good value for money. They come in two colours, yellow and a red, with red being the stiffer of the two. They aren't quite as hard as the PowerFlex Black, but are a similar stiffness to purple and are very, very cost effective when upgrading from standard to poly bushes. Now, before we move on to our final item, just a quick word on the rear anti-roll bar. Now, I've chosen to swap over to a 4-motion rear bar, as this is slightly thicker at 16mm, and it should help with the handling of the car by dialing in a small increase in oversteer. Quite a popular mod alternative to that is to upgrade for the even larger rear anti-roll bar from an R32. However, because the thicker anti-roll bars can actually reduce grip at the limit, we aren't going to be able to cover that in depth, so I'm not going to even attempt to in this video. I've decided to stick with the smaller bar as a compromise between the two. Having done all of that, the final item we're going to talk about today are these beautiful adjustable control arms. Once again, made by CB Auto in-house. They are seriously strong, made using 3mm stainless steel on the body, and they have 5mm clevis fork ends. The welds are beautifully done and all the components used are top quality. Take the adjusters for example. They're finished in M16 EN24 high carbon steel, meaning they'll be corrosion resistant and easy to adjust, while the main body are finished in a powder coat, helping to stay fresh for years to come. They do recommend greasing and covering the adjuster once it's been set to the desired length, just to help with any future adjustments that might need to be made, but this is fairly easily done with some tape or even a neoprene sleeve. At this point, you may be thinking why we even need to put a set of these in the car, as they are fairly costly when compared to standard arms. To answer that, we need to look at a couple of issues with failure points. So the TT came from factory with rose jointed bushes. These were fitted to the outer of each control arm. In terms of performance, they were actually really, really effective, and they allowed movement of the control arms to operate with a full range of movement. Unfortunately, they also had a tendency to seize solid, which over time has caused multiple instances of control arms snapping due to them being unable to cope with the forces being exerted on them. Now, this usually ends up with the rear wheels of the car essentially falling into the arches. Even though some in the VW and Audi scene may actually want their car to look like this, it's definitely not the way you want to do it. Audi actually replaced these bushes with a rubber version, which, to be fair, did solve the problem of the arm snapping, but it came at the cost of reduced movement and articulation. Now, fortunately, in terms of bushes, Paul at CB Auto has released a set of replacement rose jointed ones, which can be used in conjunction with the new arms. Now, usually people will only run one pair of arms at this, either top or bottom, as this generally gives enough adjustment for their needs, but we've decided to go with two pairs as they all needed changing anyway, and then essentially gives us some more control when making adjustments in the future. In terms of cost, the bars are available as a pair for £220 directly from CB Auto. The rose joint bushes are also available as a set of 4 for £99, which I think is pretty good value considering they're all hand finished and that the Audi versions are no longer available. It's worth noting as well that the adjustable tyre bars are available from KW, Forge and Silver Project amongst others. Prices range from around £75 from the Silver projects up to around £350 for the Forge ones. Thanks for watching, and remember, if you want to know a little bit more about what's happening, you can always drop us a message in the comments. And if you want to support the channel for the cost of a cup of coffee, you can either subscribe or become a channel member for, not a lot really. Thanks very much and see you soon.